Before we begin, I invite you to subscribe so you won't miss the next story that might brighten your day. Blood splattered across the cold mountain asphalt as a billionaire collapsed, a bullet tearing through his chest, yet his last breath wasn't for himself. It was for the young woman clutching a worn teddy bear, the daughter he had been searching for during 20 years of sleepless nights. In one shocking moment, a truck driver who believed she was abandoned discovered the truth. She wasn't forgotten, she was stolen. And the very woman she once called Aunt had planned her death from the beginning. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a story of love so relentless, it defied bullets, lies, and time itself. It was pouring rain. The road leading to the luxurious villas of the upper class was dazzling with headlights and water droplets splashed from the tires of luxury cars. In the rain, an old truck turned into the service gate of Hale Mansion, a white house spread over thousands of square meters, a place where even the dreams of the poor could not be reached. Liana Brooks, her calloused hands gripping the steering wheel, her heart pounding. She had been driving for more than 10 hours, just hoping to make a delivery, to earn some extra money to pay the rent on her shabby room. The cold rain hit her pale face, but her eyes remained steadfast. In the rearview mirror, an old, faded teddy bear with a hand-embroidered yellow star slightly askew swayed. It was the only thing she had left from her ragged childhood, an object that was as close to her as her breath. When the car stopped, a butler in uniform stepped out, his eyes cold. "You're late, mister. Hale has been waiting for 3 hours." Liana tried to smile despite her fatigue. "Traffic jam, I'm sorry. I have a delivery from Morrison Supplies." But before he could finish his sentence, the sound of shoes echoed on the marble floor. A man appeared. His hair was neatly combed, his figure tall and thin, wearing an expensive suit. It was Victor Hale, the famous cold tycoon, once called by the press as the heartless man in the business world. He looked at Liana, his voice cold as steel. 3 hours? Do you know how much my time is worth? An old truck like you dares to interrupt my work." The words fell, sharper than a knife. Liana bit her lip, but her eyes burned with anger. She had heard such contemptuous words from the rich too many times. "Sorry, but I work all day to make a living. No one sits around late for appointments." The air was thick. The butler frowned, expecting her to be fired immediately, but Victor stopped. His eyes turned to the truck cab where the little teddy bear was swaying in the rain. Victor's face paled. His hands, which usually controlled billion-dollar deals, trembled. He stepped closer and whispered, "It can't be Captain Starr." Liana frowned. What did you say?" Victor didn't answer. He pressed his hand against the window, staring at the bear like a ghost from the past. The rain was pouring down, but there were other tears in his eyes, tears that had been buried for 2 decades. 20 years ago, his daughter, Madeline Hale, disappeared at a charity event. The only thing missing with her was the teddy bear with the crooked yellow star. Victor staggered back, his old heart pounding. The butler panicked. "Mr. Hale, are you okay?" But he heard nothing but the rain and the echoes of his memories. His eyes stopped on Liana's face. Those eyes were a terrifying match for his dead wife. In that moment, Victor was no longer a cold tycoon but a father, facing the unthinkable. But Liana, a poor girl who had never known her biological parents, only saw a strange man looking at her with eyes that seemed to pierce her heart. She stepped back slightly and whispered, "If you're done, please sign the order. I have to go." Victor opened his mouth, but the words caught in his throat. He could not immediately say, "My daughter." Not when he himself dared not believe it, but the fire of doubt was already burning, and it would burn away all the false peace he had buried for 20 years. The rain that day left an unfillable void in Victor's heart. He sat in his large study all night, the desk lamp casting a thin shadow on the wooden wall. In front of him was a glass of sparkling wine, but all he swallowed were dark memories. No way but those eyes and that teddy bear, he muttered. Victor Hale, the man who had won dozens of billion-dollar deals and terrified thousands of employees, now trembled like a man who had lost everything. He remembered his only daughter, Madeline, 7 years old, who had been taken from him at a concert. And now, 20 years later in that old van, he saw a living replica of his past. But he couldn't rush in and tell the truth. Who was Liana, that girl? There was only one way. Approach her slowly, find out, then confirm. 2 days later, at a small roadside restaurant, Liana sat across from a plate of cold ham sandwiches. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but she still smiled awkwardly when the waiter joked. "Did you run all night again?" "Yeah, but as long as bread is cheap, I can live." At that moment, a middle-aged man in faded flannel clothes and dusty shoes sat down at the table opposite, smiled friendly. "Sorry, the restaurant is too crowded. Please sit here for a while." Liana was a little wary, but he looked like a retired long-haul driver. "No, it's fine. Where are you going?" The man scratched his head, his voice hoarse. "Call me Rick. I used to drive for 30 years, now I just stop by the old shop to reminisce. You drive a truck, so young and already in this profession, how admirable." Liana smiled sadly. "There weren't many options. Uncle, I was an orphan since I was young, grew up in a foster home, and then jumped around from job to job. Trucking was the only way to support myself." Rick, who was actually Victor in disguise, listened to every word, his heart aching. This girl had never known her parents, lived a life of wandering, just like he had feared for the past 2 decades. "You must be lonely traveling so much," Rick asked. Liana sighed, glancing out at the parking lot where her truck was parked. In the rearview mirror, the pale blue teddy bear still swayed. "It's enough to have it with me. I can't remember who gave it to me, but I've held it since I was little. It's strange, like it's the only thing that reminds me that I belong to someone." Victor clenched his hands under the table to keep from shaking. He wanted to hug her, to say, "My child," but reason held him back. She wasn't ready. The story dragged on, and the more Victor listened, the more it hurt. Liana told of her years of being rejected for adoption, being passed around dozens of foster homes, and finally dropping out of school early to make a living. She was both proud and fragile, proud because she didn't fall, fragile because no one had ever protected her. Rick whispered, "Have you ever thought that maybe there's someone out there who's been looking for you all these years?" Liana laughed, but her smile was sad. "If that were true, they wouldn't have left me alone until now. I have no hope anymore. Family is just a luxury." Victor felt his heart shatter. Those words were like a knife piercing the regret that had gnawed at him for years. As night fell, the bar gradually emptied. Before leaving, Liana said, "Uncle Rick, thank you for talking to me. Not everyone is willing to listen to a strange driver." Victor smiled, hiding his wet eyes. "Don't forget, on a long journey, sometimes meeting someone who understands you is more precious than gold." As Liana got into the car, he stood outside the shop, watching. The headlights illuminated the swaying pale blue teddy bear. He whispered, just loud enough for himself to hear, "Madeline, I'm still here." Meanwhile, in another part of the Hale mansion, a woman was listening in on a secret phone call. Victor's sister, Judith, said coldly, "He's already making his move. Find out who that girl is. If it's what I'm afraid of, we have to put it out." Darkness falls, signaling an underground battle, about to erupt where the truth will be fought between love and ambition. In the following days, Liana continued her long journey, but the memory of Uncle Rick still haunted her mind. Strangely, he was just a stranger sitting at the same table at a roadside restaurant, but he left a strange feeling of closeness. That voice, that look, not like the polite people she had met, but like someone who had been waiting for her for a long time. As for Victor, from the moment he saw the teddy bear in Liana's car, he could no longer live in peace. During the day, he still wore the cold tycoon's coat, handled big contracts, and scolded his subordinates. But at night, he put on an old flannel shirt, drove an old pickup truck, and became Rick, a retired driver, just to have more opportunities to sit across from Liana and listen to her talk about life. One evening, at a rest stop in Albany, Liana was working on a tire when Rick showed up. He walked over, wrench in hand, and said, half-jokingly, "Let me help, my hands still remember." Liana laughed. "You know how to take off a truck tire? You look more like someone who drinks coffee in a cafe." Rick smiled gently, then quickly tightened the screw. The hand that had signed billions of dollars trembled as it touched the greasy wheel. But for him, it was a real joy to be with his daughter, even if it was in the guise of a stranger. They sat on the sidewalk, sharing a bag of chips. Liana told of the times the shipping company had cheated her out of her pay, of the cold nights she had spent sleeping in the cabin with only a thin jacket. She didn't complain, just smiled faintly as if she was used to it. Rick looked at her, eyes misty. "Do you ever dream of a different life?" "Yes," Liana replied, her eyes distant. "I wish I had a real home where someone would wait for me, but that's just a dream. I've learned to live without expectations." Victor clenched his fists, the pain in his heart burning. His daughter, the child he had promised to protect for the rest of his life, sat here, dreaming of the things that should have been hers since birth. Meanwhile, at the Hale mansion, Judith grew increasingly uneasy. She had Victor followed and found that he frequently disappeared at night. A report was placed on Judith's desk, stating, "He met a female truck driver named Liana Brooks. She had a blue teddy bear with a yellow star embroidered on it. Victor seemed to take a special interest in her." Judith threw the papers down, her eyes flashing with malice. "This can't go any further. If that girl really is Madeline, everything we've built over the years will come crashing down." She flashed back to 20 years ago, the night she had orchestrated Madeline's disappearance, driven by greed and jealousy. She had survived, and now the truth threatened to drag her down. "I have to make the first move," Judith whispered, her lips curving into a cold smile. As the weeks passed, the bond between Liana and Uncle Rick became more evident. She found him different from the other people she knew. There was a rare patience and understanding in him, as if he knew all the wounds she had suffered. One day, while sitting in a small diner in Springfield, Rick asked, "Do you ever remember anything from your childhood, before you went to the orphanage?" Liana fell silent. A vague memory flashed through her mind, classical music, a large house, and a warm man's voice reading to her. Tears fell involuntarily. "Yes, but I'm not sure if it was a dream or reality." Rick choked. He knew it wasn't a dream, but a memory from his childhood. Another night on the highway, while Liana was stopping at a gas station, a strange man approached her. He looked at her suspiciously, then walked away. She felt uneasy, but didn't pay much attention to it. In fact, he was the man Judith had hired to secretly follow her. Victor, on his part, had an undercover investigation. Records from an orphanage in North Carolina revealed a chilling truth. Liana had been there the same year Madeline had disappeared, at age 7, with a head injury that had caused amnesia. There was no birth certificate, no relatives, just the name Liana Brooks scribbled down. Victor's heart clenched. The truth was coming clear to him piece by piece. But he still didn't dare say it, afraid that his daughter wouldn't believe him, afraid that she would hate him for abandoning him for 20 years. Meanwhile, Judith was running out of patience. She devised a dirty plan, set up a fake transportation contract, and used it as a trap. When Liana accepted, it would be her last trip. The storm has formed. And Liana, a poor girl longing for a home, has no idea that she is stepping closer to a dangerous vortex where truth, love, and even life are all tested. That night, a cold wind swept across the mountain road. Liana had just finished a delivery when she received a call from an unfamiliar trucking company. The man on the line sounded urgent. "Miss Brooks, we have an urgent medical shipment from Pittsburgh to Denver. The main driver is suddenly ill and we need a replacement. $5,000 for 2 days. Do you accept it?" $5,000, an amount Liana had never dreamed of. It was enough to fix her broken-down car and enough left over to send to the foster home where she grew up. She hesitated, then agreed. "Address, 1247 Industrial Boulevard. Go to warehouse number 7. We'll wait for you." A shiver ran down her spine as she hung up, but Liana shook her head. Maybe she was being too suspicious. Meanwhile, Victor as Rick was still sitting in his office, poring over the documents his private investigator had sent him. A copy of the medical examination results from the old orphanage appeared. A girl named Liana had been found the day Madeline went missing, with a head injury and temporary amnesia. Victor was almost certain Liana was his daughter, but before he could plan his approach, the phone rang. It was Adam, a veteran detective, on the other end of the line. "Victor, I'm following Judith as you requested. She just directed someone to set up a fake contract to trick a female driver named Liana. I'm afraid it's a trap." Victor's heart sank. He jumped up and screamed, "My God, what is Judith going to do to her?" "It's not just a threat," Adam replied quickly. "They hired a hitman. If Liana goes to that warehouse, she'll never come back." Victor paled. He knew his sister better than anyone. Judith would do anything to cover up her past crimes. At the warehouse at 1247 Industrial Boulevard, the air was cold. Many windows were broken, weeds were growing, and only a black SUV was parked outside. Liana parked and got out, holding her clipboard as usual. "Hello, I'm here to pick up medical supplies." 2 men stepped out of the shadows. One of them had a long scar on his cheek and smirked. "The merchandise has changed. Today, you are the merchandise." Liana barely understood when they pulled out their guns. Her survival instinct told her to run. She ran toward the cabin, bullets whistling past her ears, glass shattering. The truck roared as it sped down the narrow road. Behind it, the SUV turned on its headlights and followed closely. The intercom in the cabin rang out. "Liana Brooks, don't waste your time. There's no way out of the mountain road ahead. Stop, we just want to talk." A familiar female voice rang out, cold and arrogant. "Judith." In the breathless chase, Liana struggled to hold on to the steering wheel. The mountain road was winding, one slip and the car would plunge into the abyss. Behind, the SUV was close behind, its headlights like evil eyes. "Who are you? Why are you calling me Madeline?" Liana shouted into the walkie-talkie. Judith's voice echoed back, sweet yet venomous. "Don't you remember? You are my granddaughter. You should have died 20 years ago. Tonight I will make it right." Each word was like a knife cutting into Liana's mind. Fragments of memories rushed back. Classical music, a gentle hand placing a teddy bear beside her pillow, a house filled with light. "No, no way," Liana trembled. Just then an old pickup truck came from the opposite direction, blocking the road. Rick Victor jumped out, holding a flashlight, waving wildly. "Liana, stop, it's a trap." The SUV braked, the tires screeching. The scarred man stuck his gun through the window. A shot rang out, the bullet grazed Victor's shoulder. He fell to his knees but kept screaming. "You have to believe me, you're not Liana, you're Madeline Hale, my daughter." The world stopped. Liana's ears rang. The pieces of the puzzle suddenly clicked into place. The teddy bear, the dreams, the old voice. "What?" Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at the silver-haired man who was holding his wound but still reaching out to her. The SUV revved up and the assassins rushed out. Judith emerged from the back seat holding a pistol, her face as cold as stone. "It's touching, but that feeling ends right here." In a moment of crisis, Liana is faced with 2 choices: drive off the cliff to escape or face the truth that is being revealed. Her heart was pounding, torn between fear and the desire to call out Dad for the first time in her life. And ahead, the fateful battle between love and crime is about to erupt. Gunfire still echoed through the night. Liana's truck tilted dangerously, its rear tire hit by bullets skidding across the road, sparks flying. On the other side, Judith's SUV slammed on its brakes and masked men rushed out with guns in their hands. Victor held his bloody shoulder, still trying to stand in front of his daughter. He shouted hoarsely, "Run, Madeline, don't let them catch you." But Liana didn't move. Her eyes were drawn to the silver-haired man. Deep down, her heart whispered, "That's my father, my real father." Judith stepped out, her high heels clicking on the pavement. Blood was dripping from her forehead from the impact, but she held her head high, a cold smile on her face. "Funny, after 20 years you still won't let go. Victor, you're such a weakling, letting your emotions rule you." She raised the gun, aiming it at her brother's chest. "And you, Madeline, you should have been dead long ago. I won't let a child ruin my future." Liana trembled, but for the first time in her life, she did not back down. You are the one who destroyed my childhood. Because of money, because of jealousy, you took away my family." Judith laughed contemptuously. Family is power, wealth, prestige, and that weak emotion only leads to failure." At that moment, a figure rushed out from behind. Adam, Victor's trusted detective, despite his head being covered in blood after being ambushed, still got up, holding a gun pointed straight at Judith. "Put down the gun, Judith. Your game is over." She was startled for a moment, but immediately smiled faintly. "Do you think you alone can fight against me and my subordinates?" The two assassins immediately raised their guns. In the chaos, Liana acted. She rushed to the truck cab, pulled out the large wrench that was still in the door compartment, and turned to throw it straight at the scarred man. The gun flew off the cliff. Victor took the opportunity to jump in front of his daughter, but another shot rang out. He fell to his knees, blood soaking his shirt. "Father!" Liana cried, rushing to his aid. Victor gasped, his trembling hand gripping his daughter's. You really are Madeline. I'm sorry for making you suffer for 20 years." Liana's tears fell like rain. She hugged him, her heart breaking. "No, don't say any more. You were looking for me." "I know. I remember." Judith stepped closer, her eyes glowing with hysteria. "It was touching, but the act ends here." She raised the gun, aimed straight at Liana. In that moment, everything slowed down. The sound of the wind, the lingering smell of gunpowder, and her father's eyes filled with love as he looked at her one last time. Victor jumped up, shielding himself. There was a loud bang. The bullet went straight into his chest. "No!" Liana screamed, hugging her father who was falling. Warm blood flowed out, soaking into her hands. Adam roared, lunged forward, knocked the gun out of Judith's hand, and put her in a headlock. The two assassins saw the situation change and fled into the night. Police sirens and helicopters echoed. In the distance. Adam had given the signal before he was ambushed. Flashlights flashed, and groups of commandos rushed in, tying up Judith and her gang. In Liana's arms, Victor whispered, his voice as weak as his last breath. "Daughter, I have never stopped looking for you. You are my little star." Liana pressed her forehead against his, choking. "I remember, Father. I remember everything. Please don't leave me again." The helicopter's lights lit up the valley. The nurses rushed in, placing Victor on a stretcher and running, performing chest compressions. Liana held her father's hand tightly, not letting go. "Please save him. He is my father." Her voice echoed in the dark night. As the medical helicopter took off, the wind blew Liana's hair. She stood watching, her eyes filled with hope and fear. Beside her, Adam placed his hand on her shoulder and said in a low voice, "He still has a chance. We have kept the truth. Now we must fight to keep his life." Liana nodded, clutching the old teddy bear she always carried. The light from the embroidered yellow star seemed to shine brightly in the night, signaling that the journey was not over, but the light of family had been lit once more. That night, Liana sat waiting in front of the operating room. The red light was burning like a fire burning her heart. She couldn't remember how many times she prayed, how many times she whispered, "Please save my father," in despair. Beside him, Adam also collapsed onto the chair. The wound on his forehead was roughly bandaged. Despite his exhaustion, he still watched the young girl as if protecting the last remaining piece of his best friend. Finally, near dawn, the door opened. The doctor came out, his face covered in sweat but his eyes filled with hope. "Mister, Victor is out of danger." The bullet was just a few centimeters from his heart, but we stopped the bleeding and reconnected the vein. He needs time to recover, but his chances of survival are very good. Liana burst into tears, her tears turning into a relieved smile. She whispered, "Thank God my father will live." A few days later, the police announced a shocking indictment. Judith Hale was charged with kidnapping, attempted murder, money laundering, and concealing the crime for 2 decades. Her life ended behind bars, without power or fame. The media exploded. Newspapers that had once praised the successful businesswoman now ran headlines exposing the truth. The betrayal sister, the dark conspiracy behind the Hale family. But Victor refused all interviews. He only said one sentence. "I don't want to talk about her anymore. The only thing I care about is that my daughter, Madeline, is alive." When Victor woke up in the hospital, Liana sat by his bedside, still holding his father's hand tightly. He looked at her, his voice weak but his eyes bright. "I was afraid I would never hear you call me again. But now, just one word, Dad, from you is enough to heal 20 years of pain." Liana choked. "I lived like a rootless person, always thinking I was abandoned. But you proved, you never stopped looking for me. I believe it." Victor tried to lift his hand, touching the star necklace he had made for her 8th birthday. "From now on, you are no longer an outsider. You are Madeline Hale, my daughter. But if you still want to be Liana Brooks, that's fine. You have the right to have both names because they are both part of the journey that made you who you are today." Tears welled up in Liana's eyes. She nodded. "I'll keep both. One to remember the past, one to step into the future." A few months later in court, as the judge sentenced Judith to life in prison, Liana stood up to speak. Her voice was strong and resonant. "I was an orphan living in fear and deprivation. But today I stand here as Victor Hale's daughter, and more importantly, as someone who knows the power of love. I will spend the rest of my life helping lost children find a home like I did." The courtroom fell silent. Many people shed tears. After the trial, Victor announced the creation of the Madeline Star Foundation, which supports abandoned children and victims of kidnapping. Liana became its face, traveling around telling her story to spread faith and hope. During a fundraising event, she saw orphans playing in a new playground built with the funds. A little girl ran up to her and gave her a doodle of a shining star. Liana hugged her, her heart warm. "You will never have to grow up empty like I did." That Christmas Eve, for the first time in 21 years, Liana, or rather, Madeline, returned to her childhood room. The little princess bed, the fairy tale books, and on the shelf, the old teddy bear Captain Stardust lay there, waiting for her all those years. Victor walked in, his hand still bandaged, smiling gently. "I still keep everything the same. I know one day you will return." Liana ran to hug him, choking up. "I'm back, Dad, and this time I'll never leave again." Outside the window, snow was falling, sprinkling tiny stars across the garden. Inside, father and son sat by the fireplace, hand in hand. The wounds were slowly healing, not only on the body, but also in the heart. As the flickering firelight illuminated their faces, Victor whispered, "Daughter, sometimes life is so cruel that it wants to take everything away. But as long as there is hope and love, family will find each other, no matter how long it takes." Liana leaned her head on her father's shoulder and softly replied, "Yes, and I will live to prove it to every child who ever thought they were forgotten." The star on the necklace sparkled, reflecting a warm light, and in that moment they both understood. The journey of blood and tears had finally led them home. Sometimes, life's deepest wounds hide behind the strongest smiles. This story reminds me that no matter how far we are separated, love never stops searching. It waits, it endures, and one day it finds its way back. And maybe that's the lesson we can all take with us. True family isn't just blood, it's the people who never give up on us, even when the world turns cold. Ask yourself, who in your life needs to hear that they're not forgotten? Who deserves a second chance at love and forgiveness? For me, I've learned that pain can either break us or shape us into someone strong enough to heal others. As the saying goes, the cracks in our heart are where the light enters. Thank you for spending these moments with me today. If this story touched your heart, I'd love for you to join our little community here. Just click the subscribe button below. It's free, and it means we can share more meaningful stories together. You are always welcome here.